Curtis retired at 59 with about $180,000 saved. Not nothing, but nowhere near the million-plus number every retirement calculator kept telling him he needed. He did the math on staying in the U.S., and it terrified him. Then he looked at the same number through the lens of 5 other countries, and something strange happened. The fear went away. Not because the $180,000 grew, because in the right place it simply went further, far enough that his monthly Social Security check alone covered most of his actual life. In this video, I'm walking through 5 countries where that shift happens, the real visa requirements, the real monthly costs, and the one country near the end where your Social Security check alone can often qualify you for permanent residency, no other income required. If your savings have ever felt like not enough, this is the video where that feeling gets tested against real numbers. Here's the assumption almost everyone starts with, including me for a while. Mexico. Close, familiar, cheap, the obvious answer. And the cost of living part is still true. A single person spends around $637 a month there on everyday expenses, not counting rent, compared to $1,166 in the U.S. That's real and it's not changed. What has changed is the door-in. Step 1. As of last year, Mexico raised the income bar for its residency visa significantly. To qualify for temporary residency now, you generally need to show around $4,200 a month in income. For permanent residency, it jumps to roughly $7,000 a month. That's not a typo, and it's not what most people expect when they picture cheap and easy Mexico. If your income is Social Security plus a modest pension, that number can be genuinely out of reach, even though the actual cost of living there would fit your budget easily. The country got more expensive to move to without getting more expensive to live in. Those are 2 different numbers, and conflating them is where a lot of people get stuck before they even start. Worth knowing for any of these 5 countries, not just Mexico, most of these visa programs count 401k and IRA withdrawals as qualifying income, not just Social Security or a pension. If you've been building up those catch-up contributions we've talked about before, that money isn't locked out of counting toward a residency visa. It's usually treated the same as any other retirement income, as long as you can document it consistently. Step 2. So if Mexico's visa door swung mostly shut for modest savers, where's the door that's still wide open? Ecuador. Specifically, cities like Cuenca, where a comfortable single-person budget lands around $500 a month or less. Housing, food, everything included. The retiree visa there asks for proof of about $800 a month in guaranteed income. Social Security alone clears that bar for most people, easily. Part of why Cuenca specifically draws so many retirees is the climate. Locals call it eternal spring, high enough in elevation to stay mild and comfortable year-round, without the brutal heat or the brutal winters most of us have spent decades adjusting our whole lives around. Here's a detail almost nobody mentions about Ecuador, and it matters more than it sounds like it should. The country's official currency is the US dollar. Has been since 2000. That means the exact same thing that makes Panama's numbers feel simple applies here too. No exchange rate to track, no currency conversion eating into your Social Security check, no watching a foreign currency swing against you while you're trying to budget on a fixed income. If Cuenca's mountain climate isn't your style, the coast offers a different version of the same country. Towns like Salinas or Manta, warmer, closer to the beach, similar cost structure, same dollar-based simplicity. Curtis actually looked hard at Ecuador before landing somewhere else, and the number that got him wasn't the visa, it was the health care. Private health insurance premiums there run a small fraction of U.S. costs for comparable coverage, and Cuenca specifically has a well-established expat community that's been building for over a decade, which meant he wasn't going to be figuring out doctors and pharmacies alone in a language he didn't speak yet. Step 3. Here's where Curtis actually landed, and it's the country most people don't think to look at first: Thailand. Specifically a town called Hua Hin, a couple hours from Bangkok, established beach town, calmer and more affordable than the party town reputation Thailand sometimes gets stuck with. Curtis lives there now on roughly $1,440 a month, all in. Rent, food, transportation, the works. The visa is called the non-immigrant OA, and it gives you two paths in. Either 800,000 Thai baht sitting in a Thai bank account, somewhere in the neighborhood of $22,000 depending on the exchange rate that week, or proof of roughly 65,000 baht a month in income, which lands around $1,800. Curtis went the income route. His Social Security plus a small pension cleared it without stretching. One practical detail that catches people off guard: the OA visa isn't permanent the way Panama's is. It requires annual renewal, along with a 90-day address report to immigration and periodic re-entry permits if you plan to travel. It's manageable. Curtis says it's become routine, a couple hours of paperwork a year. But it's a genuinely different commitment than a one-time approval, and worth knowing going in rather than discovering it after you've already moved. Here's the part that actually convinced him, though, and it wasn't the visa or even the monthly cost. It was healthcare. Hua Hin has private hospitals, Bangkok Hospital, Hua Hin among them, that carry international accreditation, the same standard U.S. hospitals get evaluated against. Curtis needed a minor procedure 8 months after moving. He told me the bill came out to roughly 60 to 80% less than what the same procedure would have cost him back home, at a facility that looked, in his words, nicer than my old hospital in Ohio ever did. He wasn't chasing paradise. He was 59, tired of watching his $180,000 shrink against U.S. prices in his head every time he ran the numbers. Thailand didn't make the $180,000 bigger. It just made it stop feeling like it was disappearing. Hua Hin isn't Thailand's only option either. Chiang Mai, up in the mountainous north, runs even cheaper. Couples there often live comfortably on around $100-200 a month total, thanks to a lower cost of living and a large, well-established international community built up over decades. Curtis chose the beach over the mountains. That part comes down to what kind of life you actually want, not which number is technically lowest. I asked him what surprised him most 6 months in. He said it wasn't the beaches. It was how boring an ordinary Tuesday there could feel. Grocery shopping, a walk, dinner out without checking the bill twice. Boring, in the specific way that means nothing is scaring you anymore. There are 2 countries left, and one of them makes even Curtis's numbers look complicated by comparison. Step 4. Portugal first because it's the one most people romanticize, and for once the romance mostly holds up. The visa is called the D7, and it asks for proof of about €920 a month in passive income, Social Security counts. In the Algarve region specifically, rents run roughly 60% lower than comparable U.S. cities, groceries about 40% cheaper. Processing typically takes 6 to 9 months this year, and it puts you on an actual path to permanent residency, eventually citizenship, if that's ever something you want. Portugal isn't the cheapest country on this list. It's the one that gives you Europe, real culture, real history, walkable towns, without European price tags attached. One more thing worth knowing about Portugal specifically: it has one of the largest, most established American and British expat communities in Europe at this point, concentrated heavily in the Algarve and around Lisbon. That means English-speaking doctors, expats' social clubs, and entire relocation industries that exist purely to walk newcomers through the paperwork. You're rarely doing this completely alone, the way you might in a less-traveled destination. But here's the country that made me want to make this video in the first place: Panama. The visa is called the pensionado, and the income requirement is $1,000 a month in guaranteed lifetime pension. That's it. Social Security alone clears that bar for most retirees in this country, on its own, without a second income source. No minimum age, no property purchase required. And unlike almost every other country on this list, you don't wait years in temporary status. Panama grants permanent residency immediately, on approval. A couple can live comfortably there on $2,000 to $3,000 a month. The currency is the US dollar itself, so there's no exchange rate risk sitting between you and your Social Security check. And by law, pensionado visa holders get built-in discounts, around 25% off dining, 15% off hospital bills, further reductions on flights and utilities. Panama didn't just make itself affordable, It legally wrote retirees a discount into the country's own laws, where you actually settle matters too. Panama City feels like a real modern capital, high-rises, traffic, a genuine city. A couple hours away in the highlands, a town called Boquete offers a completely different life. Cooler mountain climate, quieter, and it's become one of the most established expat communities in the country, precisely because it doesn't feel tropical or overwhelming the way people sometimes assume all of Panama does. I want to be honest about something before we go further, because this isn't right for everyone, and pretending otherwise would be dishonest. Leaving the U.S. means leaving grandkids, familiar doctors, the language you've spoken your whole life, a version of home you've known for decades. None of these 5 countries fix a savings shortfall by themselves if the real problem is you'd be miserable far from family. And there's a quieter cost too. Time zones make regular calls with grandkids harder, flights home cost real money and take real time, and holidays that used to mean walking into a familiar living room now mean an airport. Some people try it for a year and come home, and that's not failure. That's just useful information they didn't have before they left. This video is for the specific person who's already been quietly wondering, what if? Not trying to talk anyone into something they don't actually want. Tell me in the comments, of these 5, which one would you actually consider and which would you never do? I'm curious how split this gets because I have a feeling it's not going to be close to unanimous. Step 5. Here's the 5 countries again, side by side, so you can actually compare them at a glance instead of holding 5 different numbers in your head. Mexico, cheap to live in, but now requires roughly $4,200 a month in income for temporary residency. Ecuador, around $800 a month required. Comfortable living around $1,500. Thailand, roughly white $100 a month in income or about $22,000 in a Thai bank account. Comfortable living around $1,440 in Hua Hin. Portugal, about €920 a month. Comfortable but not the cheapest. Real path to European citizenship. And Panama, $1,000 a month. Immediate permanent residency, no age requirement. Built-in legal discounts. If you want to actually start looking into this, instead of just watching another video about it, here's where to begin. Look up your own Social Security benefit estimate at ssa.gov if you don't already have the exact number memorized. Compare that number against each country's income requirement plainly side by side. Pick the 1 or 2 that clear the bar most comfortably and book a 2 or 3 week trial visit before you commit to anything permanent. Almost everyone I've talked to who's done this well did a trial run first. And talk to an immigration attorney who specializes in that specific country, not a general one, before you file anything. One more practical piece before you go further. Medicare generally doesn't follow you overseas. With very limited exceptions, it won't cover care outside the U.S., which means budgeting for private international health insurance or paying directly for local care becomes part of the plan, not an afterthought. The good news, as you've probably noticed by now, is that private care in all 5 of these countries tends to cost a fraction of U.S. prices anyway, but a fraction of still means something, and it belongs in your numbers from the start. One thing worth knowing that surprises almost everyone the first time they hear it: moving abroad doesn't end your U.S. tax filing obligation. Americans owe U.S. taxes on worldwide income no matter where they live, for as long as they hold U.S. citizenship. Most of these countries have tax treaties or exclusions that prevent you from actually paying twice, but no more taxes is not how any of this works, and a cross-border tax professional should be part of your plan from day one, not an afterthought. This is education, not personalized immigration, tax, or financial advice. Visa rules, income verification requirements, and tax treaties change, and they change per country. So confirm current details with a qualified attorney and a cross-border tax professional before making any decisions. The map most of us are using to judge whether our savings are enough was drawn for one country. Just one. Every fear about running out, every retirement calculator telling you that you need 7 figures, it's all measured against U.S. prices, because that's the only map most of us ever learned to read. It's not that your savings are too small, it's that the map was wrong for what you actually needed. It's not that $180,000 isn't enough anywhere. It's that $180,000 isn't enough in exactly one country, and nobody ever showed you the rest of the map. I think about the version of Curtis sitting at his kitchen table at 59, running the same math over and over, getting the same scary answer every time because he only had one map to check it against. He wasn't bad at math, he just didn't know there were other maps. That's really the only thing that changed for him. Not his savings, not his Social Security check, just which map he was allowed to use. Tell me which of these 5 you'd actually consider. I'm building a future video that goes deep on whichever one gets the most votes, real numbers, real neighborhoods, the whole thing. I share this kind of thing every week because I'm still figuring a lot of it out myself, 8 years in. If that's useful to you, subscribing means you don't miss the next one. Curtis retired at 59 with about $180,000 saved. Not nothing, but nowhere near the million-plus number every retirement calculator kept telling him he needed. The fear went away. Not because the number grew, because the map changed.